Hello, fellow book lovers, both readers and writers. I am Matty Dalrymple. I am the author of the Ann Kinnear Suspense Novels and Suspense Shorts in the Lizzy Ballard Thrillers, and I also write, speak, consult, and podcast on the writing craft and the publishing voyage as the indie author. And this is my video series, What I Learned, where I ask authors 2 questions about their latest book. What did they learn from their latest book that they'd like to share with their fellow authors? And what did they learn from their latest book that they'd like to share with their fellow readers? And so I am here today with Sarah Ickes. Hey, Sarah, how are you doing?
Hi, good. How about you?
I'm doing great, thank you. To give our viewers a little bit of background on you, Sarah has a passion for art, a love for reading and writing, and an old soul when it comes to television and films. Although she has a fine arts degree, her life is not as simple as a piece of paper, having worked in retail management, web designing, and marketing. Her interest in historical America comes vividly to life in her Murial Robertson mysteries, following the adventures of a woman in the 1880s. And her latest book is A Counterfeit of Death, Murial Robertson, Book 3. And so today I'm asking Sarah the 2 What I Learned questions, starting with, what did you learn from your latest book that you'd like to share with your fellow authors?
All right. Well, when you ask that question, there is a lot of different things that come to my mind for starters. There's a lot that goes on in my third book. So there was various different obstacles I had to overcome. But the one main thing I would say is that you have to stay true to yourself when you're writing your novel. And while that may be self-evident, there's a lot more that goes into it. It's not as easy as just saying that. So to go a little bit deeper is that there is an older band I listen to, and the main guitarist in the band, he was once quoted on a website for saying this. I have it written down, so I do not mess this up. I do it my way. I play for myself first, and then secondly, the audience. And in a way, you could say that kind of sounds selfish, but there's a lot of truth in that because, like, when I was growing up, I was not a person who was into the trendy or the fad thing that, like, for that year, oh, this is the hot item for the month. This is the hot item for Christmas. Wasn't really into that. I'm still not into that. So I find that some people, whenever they after that a lot, like that's what they do. And you're changing so much with the wind, like you're jumping on whichever bandwagon is the hottest thing. You kind of lose yourself a bit. And so when you put that subject in your storyline, and I'm not saying that if you put it as a description to help get your reader into that time period, into that place, into that environment, that's okay. But when you do that as a subject line just to get your book sold as like the hot item, you're losing yourself if that's not who you are. And the readers are going to notice that. And then you're going to lose your readers. So if your compass doesn't point north to yourself and like what all is important to you, then the readers are going to notice that. And so when I was writing this book, I had a lot of fun with A Counterfeit of Death. Oh my goodness, it was a blast to write. I had a lot of fun with it. It's actually a lot longer than my second one. I was like, oh my goodness, I need to stop. Like, I'm having a lot of fun with this. And I had to pull a couple of things out because I'm like, it's going to be like 800 pages long. Like, that's just way too long. But at one point in my process this time around, I have really hit a really bad brick wall of doubt, of like self doubt and fear of like what other people are going to think and what are they going to, how are they going to take certain things, especially with some of the stuff going on with the media right now and like how some people perceive historical things. I was really, really concerned. And it really stopped me for a while. And I was finding it very difficult to get over that. And I went to a concert last year for a lady down in Hershey, and she had said how she actually had such bad anxiety right before her concerts for the longest time. Like she'd be backstage throwing up. Like she had such bad anxiety because she was so worried on how people were going to see her. Or like, what were they going to think? Did she do a good enough job? And so someone finally told her, you need to stop worrying so much about what others do think and stuff. You need to focus on what you can give. And it really like helped her say, you know what, my best in one day is different than another day, but I'm still going to give my best and leave it out there and whatever is. So that really helped me a lot in a bit to say, okay, I really need to just focus on doing my storyline and not so much on all the noise and everything out there. And so one of, I guess it could be a little quirk of mine. I actually love nighttime. I'm a night owl. I love staying up till 2 in the morning. That's just me. And so I'll go outside at night whenever, it's not humid or anything, when it's really nice and the stars are out. And I'll go outside at a picnic table out in the backyard and I'll have a solar light on everything. And that's where I do a lot of my best writing, I feel, is because there's no other distractions. My dog is passed out asleep in the grass. So it's just me and outside and the stars. And it just feels like my head is clear at that point. And so when I do my storylines, so my first book, there's other while each story is its own mystery, there's underlying theme that continues throughout the story. And so there's a big climax in the third one, and then there's a little bit left over for the fourth, just to help you lead through the storyline a bit. But in the first one, what I wanted to do was I wanted to have a motivation for my character development that is something that is timeless. It's not just for the century, it's for the past century, it's what's happening present, and it's what's going to happen in the future for every person. So it's very relatable. So in the first one, my character goes through an inner freedom struggle, and so, especially during that time period, there was a lot of restrictions. I mean, we all know it was like, a lot on status symbol and a lot on appearance and a lot of different things that we necessarily don't have as much of today. But there was a lot of restrictions. And so, my character, while she is on the security detail for her father, who's a senator, it's a very, very abnormal job for a woman back then.
Yeah.
And there was colleges and stuff for women starting up at that time frame. So we were starting to get a little bit of a headway there, but it was still very much restricted for her. And so she has the struggle where she wants to be an artist and she wants to sell stuff and everything. And her father has a tight leash on her. So she goes through this like struggle of inner freedom in the first one that she overcomes. And then the second one, she faces an unseen fear. So something happens in the first book that revenge is planned against her in the second book. And so she knows someone's following her. She knows that they're tracking her, but she doesn't know who, and she doesn't know what purpose, because she doesn't know who to trust. So there's a lot of trust issues in that one, and there's a lot of unseen fear that she has to face. And then in this latest book is rediscovering truth. So there's something that she knows in the end of the first book, and she knows to be true in the second book as well. But then when the third book comes along, she knows all of a sudden that it was not true. Everything she thought about it was false. So now she has to find out what the truth is. And so for me, that's like a timeless subject that we can all relate to, regardless of what time period you're going to read the book in or what time period it's set in. And to me, that is playing a little bit more true to who we are as a society a bit.
Yeah, I loved a bunch of the comments you made there about staying true to yourself and the importance of that, and I love the suggestion of writing in the middle of the night. I don't know if I've
Yeah.
ever heard that before. It's a
Yeah,
great tip if you're able to do that.
yeah, it's a little bit unique, I guess, for me that I get to go up and look at the moon. I go, "Oh, look, the moon's already, like, past the sky. It's, like, going down below the trees." I'm like, "I think I've been out here a little too long tonight." Like, that's how I judge it. I'm very much into that stuff, and unless it's raining, because lately we've been getting rain, and I have to dive back into the house, but,
Yeah,
yeah, I try to be out there as much as I can.
yeah, I think finding that time that is right for you and not trying to follow, advice that doesn't work, like, "You have to write first thing in the morning," or, whatever people say. Well, if it works for them, that's fine, but if it doesn't work for you, then finding that time that does, I think is a great tip. So, you shared lots of stuff that you'd like to share with your fellow authors. How about your fellow readers? What did you learn from your latest book that you'd like to share with them?
Okay. Well, for starters, I would like to say that if you look at my first book, do not be scared by the cover. I know some people are scared by it. And I'm like, okay, it has a skeleton and it has a gun on it because I love the 1880s, like the Wild West and everything like that. And she's out in Arizona way before it even became a state. It's still a territory at that time. So I wanted to have something that represented it because while my stories are traditional mysteries, they don't have any sex in them. There's not a whole lot of gore in it. There is the little bit of swearing. So on the majority, they are clean. They're not cozies, though. I will say that they are a little bit more traditional. Some people go, "Oh my goodness, there's a skeleton on the front. That's like not my style." And they move on. And I'm like, wait, no, wait. Just because of that, I mean, it's an awesome story. But no, so I just want to say is if you're looking at the skeleton, because I do my own covers and stuff. So like it may look a little bit more realistic. I like more of a graphic, like comic book style for my covers because anyone who is like a 13-year-old or older could read my stories. I promise you, it's not that gory. It's not like anything like that. So I did want to put that out there because I have had some people turned off just because of the front cover of my first book. And so I just want to lay that out there. But one of the things I love about doing historical fiction is the research. And one of the things that I love doing is the language. And whenever I do a character, I wanted to make sure that I had the language appropriate because even though some of the words we use today were in our language back then, they're not necessarily meaning the same thing. There are some words that have changed their meaning completely since that time period. So I wanted to make sure that I got it right. And an interesting one in this particular book is, I have a question for you, Maddie.
Huh?
Are you ready for it?
I think
Okay.
so.
So, how we call them refrigerators nowadays?
Yeah.
Like, for when you put your cold, what did they call them back in the 1880s?
Well, I guess the equivalent would be an icebox.
It's a very good guess. But actually, it's refrigerator.
No
They
kidding.
actually called them refrigerators back then, and I was, like, totally taken aback. I was like, "Okay, it's an ice box." So as I'm, like, starting to write my stuff, because even, like, movies back in the 1930s and 40s and stuff, they call them ice boxes, and so I'm like, "Okay, it's an ice box." And then I actually did my research, and I'm like, "It's actually a refrigerator." And I was like,
That's so
"Okay,
funny.
that is so weird." I was like, "When did we start changing it to ice box and all of a sudden change it back to refrigerator?" I'm not
Yeah.
100% sure when. But yeah, it's actually refrigerator, because they even have newspaper clippings and advertisements from companies that said, "Get your latest refrigerator." And they have the icebox illustrations and everything on them. And the root of the word actually goes back to like centuries before 1800s, meaning to keep stuff cool and everything. And so I was like, that is so cool. So maybe that's really geekish of me. I feel like I'm like, oh my goodness, that is like, I'm a big word nerd. But no, it's so awesome, because when I was doing my research, I found a book that a college had put online when they scan them into Google and stuff. Whenever their copyright goes out, it's for free domain. And I was able to save it as a PDF. It's actually perfect, 'cause it's called The Americanisms. It's a book of Americanisms, which is like slang terms and different things, published back in 1870s. And I
Oh,
thought, this is so awesome. And so the gentleman, now this is, I believe the one I have is like the third edition. I believe it's third edition, because he had a couple before then. And I was reading through the foreword that he put in, and here he was a big traveler. And so he would like write down the various different slang terms that he heard. But what he did was also is he reached out to various different places around the country, and all these people sent in different slang terms and everything, and he put them into a dictionary. So it literally is a dictionary entry that gives the root of the word, where it came from, what it means. So like there's some that are in there that are just in New England. There's some that are in there that are just Pennsylvania Dutch and different things like that. And so I was like, this is so awesome. So I feel like that added an extra level of richness to my characters, because I could add this in, like all hollered means that he was beaten to a pulp. Like he was just had a massive beating. He was like all hollered out. So an all hollered beating. And so there's just really cool things, especially with like the food. So when we get like jerky, or you get like dried apples and stuff like that, that's actually called apple leather. And so it's actually called peach leather. And I'm like, wait, they're eating leather? No, it's actually is like peach and apple leather. It's just dried out apples and dried out peaches. Or instead of mashed potatoes, it's jam potatoes. And I was like, oh, that's cool. My potatoes are jammed. They're not mashed, they're jammed. So it's just really interesting. And I could literally just read every page of that book like when I go to sleep at night. I just find it so interesting. And the
yeah.
book literally is 800 pages long. I'm like, I am not, that's going to take me forever to get through. But it has like different proverbs and sayings. It has sentence examples and different things from that era. That's just like really, really cool. So that's one of the things that I found was just really interesting. And I do put a number of them in my books, but I do not try to laden heavy it, because if I do that too much, then people are going to say, what on earth is this person saying? I have no idea. And I'm going to lose everybody. So I do try to put enough context clues in there. And then even if I don't, if you're still unsure, I do have the definitions. I'm putting them up on my website and so forth. And I am citing the book that I'm getting it from if they want to look at it, either more words and stuff from that time frame, or look at the source that I'm getting them from. That will give the definitions and everything for the page number and everything, so that they know what's going on. But one of the other things I'm really going to start looking into for my next book, possibly, but it might be the following book, definitely, is I found a doctor's handbook from that time era that they would actually slip into their jacket and everything. And it actually gave like what their pulse should be for the patient. If they're having this symptom, it actually breaks down the medical formula for the medicine that they're supposed to give the person
Oh,
and
wow.
everything. Like they actually had ones for cancer, for like different cancers. They actually had medicines you would mix to give the patient and everything. And I'm like, okay, I'm not exactly sure how well that worked, but I mean, at least I was surprised that they had stuff for that back then and
Yeah.
everything. So that one's my next one to dive into. That one is also not the shortest book. That is my next one to dive into. So I'm really excited for that one. But yeah, when a reader reads my books, I want them to really feel like they're in that time period. I really do try to get my historical facts correct. Now, there is some things that I will take liberties on, like my characters are fictional. So they weren't actually at like the Haymarket incident in Chicago is mentioned in my second book. It's a memory where these two characters had met. And at that time frame, that was a real incident that happened because nowadays we take an 8-hour workday, I think, kind of for granted. Like you go to work, you get done, you come back home. But back then they had like 12, 13-hour shifts and you only got like one day off a week. And there was a lot of protesting and everything to even get an 8-hour day. And the Haymarket incident was about that. They were supposed to be honoring this 8-hour day requirement and they weren't. And so this riot breaks out. And they're not exactly sure who shot the first bullet. I mean, I guess you could say like the shot heard around the world. No one knows who fired the first bullet, but a riot broke out and people were killed and the cops were involved and everything, and no one knows who started it. And so that's one of the things that's in my second book is mentioned. So I do put in a lot of different historical, like real events that did occur and real trains and the cars, and I try to give a real sense of it. But there is fictional in there. But I just want everyone who reads it to get a really good sense of the time period. So I do try to do that without being too much because I don't want to be like a factional reference book either. So I do try that. But that is probably because I hope everyone can get the fun that I have out of the research and see the work that goes into it.
That's so cool. Well, I think that you not only gave a great teaser for A Counterfeit of Death, but also this other book that you had referenced, and you'll be sharing your website address in a moment so people can go there and perhaps find out more about some of the terminology you used and so on. But such fun conversations here. Thank you so much. Please let the viewers know where they can go to find out more about you and everything you do online.
Oh, yeah. So my website is sarahickesart.com because I'm not just an author, I'm also an artist as well. So I actually do have a shop where I sell my artwork too. So it's sarahickesart.com. All my artwork and my books are on there. And there's a tab that specifically says books. And then it'll give you like a list of where you can find them and stuff like that. And you can buy them essentially anywhere online. You can buy them at the Mechanicsburg Mystery Bookshop. And yeah,
Where you're sitting
and
now.
yes, where I am sitting now. It's an awesome bookshop, one of the last that is mystery oriented specifically for
Yeah.
mystery. And you can also go onto my Facebook. And so it's just the same thing. It's Sarah Ickes Art. I try to keep it very simple. So people can find me Instagram, Sarah Ickes Art. I do add a 48 at the end. But essentially, as you Google Sarah Ickes Art, and you should be able to find me on a couple different things. I have a YouTube channel and so forth like that.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yep, no problem. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.